Okay, calculus people. This one is the last, well, not really the last derivative, but these are the derivatives you must know. So let's start with the derivative of sine. What is the derivative of sine? You say cosine x. What is the derivative of cosine? You say minus sine x. Those are the two really, really important ones that you know. Okay? What's the derivative of tangent x? You say secant squared x. What's the derivative of cotangent x? You say minus cosecant squared x. What's the derivative of secant? You say secant x tangent. I made this too close. Tangent x. And the derivative of cosecant is minus cosecant x cotangent x. You need to make sure you have those in your head and start to memorize them. I might give you a quiz on that. I might not. I don't know, but make sure you know them. The derivative of e to the x is another important one. That one is super easy. That's just e to the x. The derivative of the natural log of x, ln x, that's 1 over x. All right, so those are the, what is that, 8 that you need to know, that you need to be able to tell me without any trouble. Make sure you spend some time memorizing them. You also have to know the product rule, the quotient rule, the chain rule, and implicit differentiation. So I'll do a couple examples of each of these, and then the next video I make is super important because we talk about what does the first derivative tell us. We'll practice some second derivatives, and what does the second derivative tell us, okay? All right, so here's an example of the product rule. All right, product rule. All right, so I have y equals x to the second times the sine of x. All right, remember we have the first and the second. So the product rule says the first times the derivative of the second equals the second times the derivative of the first. So y prime, the first, which is x squared, times the derivative of the second, the derivative of sine is cosine x, plus the second, which is sine x, times the derivative of the first, which is 2x. So then I would rearrange this and say the derivative is x squared cosine x plus 2x times the sine of x. All right, that's the product rule. Quotient rule. The quotient rule. I have this example. Y equals 3x squared plus 6x minus 1 over e to the x. So I have the derivative of the quotient is the bottom times the derivative of the top, which is 6x plus 6, minus the top, which is 3x squared plus 6x minus 1, times the derivative of the bottom, which is e to the x, all over the bottom squared. So e to the x squared. All right, now I notice in the numerator that I have e to the x. So I'm going to factor out e to the x, and I'm going to be left with 6x plus 6, and now I'm going to distribute that minus sign. So minus 3x squared minus 6x plus 1 all over e to the x squared. So now I'm going to cancel one e to the x with one of these e to the x's. So my denominator is just going to be e to the x. And then in the numerator, I have a 6x and a minus 6x. They're going to cancel out. So I have negative 3x squared plus 7 over e to the x. And that's my derivative with my quotient rule. The next thing I'm going to do is chain rule. I'll give you a couple examples of the chain rule. Let me go back and you can look at that just for a second. So I'm going to give you an example of the chain rule. I have 2 examples, and then that'll be the end of this video. So the chain rule, the first one is y equals the cosine of 4e to the 7x. All right, so I take the derivative of cosine. So the derivative of this is minus sine of this mess, 4e to the 7x. And then I have to take the derivative of the inside. So the derivative of the inside is 4 times e to the 7x times the derivative of 7x, which is just 7. So this simplifies to negative 28 e to the 7x times the sine of 4 e to the 7x. Well, that was harder than I thought it was going to be. All right. So the last chain rule one that I have, the last example I have, is y equals the ln of x squared plus 7x plus 8. All right, so the derivative of ln of x is 1 over x. So this will be 1 over whatever's in parentheses there, which is x squared plus 7x plus 8, then times the derivative of what's inside, which will be 2x plus 7. So now all I have to do is multiply the numerators there. So I have 2x plus 7 all over this mess, x squared plus 7x plus 8. And I can't do any canceling because I can't do any factoring. So that is the end. So make sure you know these. All right, there's my 2 examples of the chain rule. And here's my product rule and quotient rule. And then these are the things you have to know from memory. All right, please respond, watch this, and then let me know if you have any questions. And the next video will be about, what does it mean? Why do we take derivatives? So I'll talk to you next time.